really need that feeling. I kind of think she deserved it. Really glad I got over myself and read it even though I was being really cynical about it. Welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Maria and today's video is going to be my quarterly wrap up. So basically I'll be breaking down all the books that I've read over the past few months, how I felt about them, did I love them, did I hate them, was I disappointed, and basically just reflecting on my first 3 months of reading this year. So I do feel like this year I got off to a little bit of a bumpy start. I feel like the first kind of couple of weeks I had a really good reading streak. I feel like I found quite a few new favourites, but after that I feel like I got in such a slump for about a month and a half, and I don't even know if I knew I was in that slump at the time, but definitely kind of mid-February to maybe mid-March I was definitely feeling very slumpy. So when I was looking through the books that I've kind of read, there was nothing really kind of jumping out at me for some of these questions, but I definitely think there's a few here that I can kind of shout out as some new favourites, some new favourite authors, and kind of wins that I've had over the last few months. So I'll probably start off with the statistics and then we'll move into kind of looking at specific books that I've liked and really just delving into the books more. So without further ado, let's just get into the wrap up. Okay, so in the first quarter of the year I read around 33 books, which honestly tracks for me. I usually read between 10 and 12 books a month, and I did read quite a few chunky books at the start of the year, and as I say, I was feeling a little bit slumpy, so I would say that's kind of expected in terms of numbers. And when I'm looking at the genres, it's pretty predictable as well. I mean, most of the books that I read fit into kind of the fantasy genre, romance genre, contemporary, young adult, and literary. So definitely don't think I was kind of veering too far away from my norm or from what I like to read. I have kind of changed that a little bit, but we'll talk about that later. But for the first 3 months, I was very much just trying to find books I thought I would love, and it didn't always work out. But looking at the stats, it definitely looks like I've kind of stayed in my comfort zone a little bit. And I think despite saying that the first 3 months were a little bit choppy, looking at my average rating, it was around a 4 star, so that probably is a little bit lower for me. I do think that I'm quite a generous rater when it comes to star ratings. I always put kind of a justification for it within the review, but I'm not a really harsh critic or anything, so 4 is probably on the lower side for me. I'm usually more like a 4.25 to 4.5 on average. But as I say, definitely been feeling a little bit slumpy recently, so that probably has impacted that. And then in terms of challenges, this year I didn't really give myself any challenges or set any challenges. I do my TBRs every month, but I just want reading to be fun, so I don't want it to be too much of a burden trying to meet a goal or anything like that when it comes to reading. But I did set myself a goal of 100 books this year, and reading 33 basically puts me right on track for probably reading a lot more than that. I do tend to read around 120 to 150 books a year, so 100 for me is pretty achievable. And then the only other challenge I really done was 25 for 2025, and I feel like I've done pretty well on that so far. So from the list that I have, I've read 10 of the 25 books, so just over a third. So I'm way ahead of the game with that one, but I need to make sure that I keep on top of it to make sure that I keep ahead of the game with that one. But so far I definitely think that I've been doing pretty well with that one. And that's pretty much all the stats that I'll go through. I don't really kind of track things like that. I like to look at it in Storyograph, so if you don't have Storyograph, definitely download it. Some of the graphics that they have are really fun to look at. But now we'll just move on to kind of some of my favourites, anything that I didn't love, any disappointments and things like that. So the first question is best book of the quarter, and I had a bit of trouble trying to pick this one because I was trying to I looked at any 5 stars that I had to see what ones I kind of thought were the best, and a few of them were great for very different reasons, but I think the one that I'm going to pick is the one that kind of surprised me the most and the one that's maybe had a bit more of an impact on my reading overall, and that book would be Time by Frederick Backman. So this is one that had obviously been on my radar for quite some time. It kind of had a bit of a moment last year on Book Talk and BookTube because I think a lot of people were just picking it up and kind of discovering the story. Kind of on the outset of this one, we're following a ice hockey team in this kind of Scandinavian town, very small town, a bit bleak, a bit desolate, and they're trying to bring back some tourism to the town. The ice hockey team are about to put them back on the map. However, a harrowing event happens just before the game that they're supposed to play. It kind of puts everything on the back burner, and just from that kind of description, I didn't think this was one that was going to really hit me. I didn't think I was going to be too impacted by it. It's literary fiction, which again isn't something that I generally would have reached for a lot before, but I really loved this. This was absolutely a 5 star for me. The writing was quite simplistic when you first picked it up, but I truly felt like I really connected with all of the characters in here. I'm a very character driven reader, so I think that's why I connected with this one so much, and I definitely think that this has convinced me that literary fiction is probably a genre that I should explore more, and I have added quite a few books to my TBR card basically because I read this. It did kind of open up some options for me, made me realise that I do need to try and get out of my comfort zone more often because there's gems like this just waiting out there for me to pick up. So definitely have to give this one my favourite of the quarter so far. But I would say kind of honorary mention for Oathbound by Tracy Dion. This was the third in the Legendborn cycle. Absolutely loved it. 5 stars. Adore that series. And then The Burning God by R.F. Kuang, which I will be talking about later, but again it was 5-star for me. Perfect conclusion to the series and I absolutely loved it. And then next up is most surprising read, but in a good way, and I have to say that one of the books that really surprised me this year is Quicksilver by Callie Hart, and I'm gonna be completely honest, I was a bit of a cynic when it came to this book. I seen it blowing up everywhere, everybody saying that it was the most amazing romantasy that they'd read in a long time, giving them ACOTAR feelings and all those things that we hear about pretty much every romantasy that comes out. So I was just really cynical that this was actually going to meet those expectations, and I put off picking this one up for such a long time. I had it on my Kindle when it was an indie publication, then it got traditionally published and I had it on my Kindle again, and yet I still didn't pick this one up until January this year, and I'm really glad I did because I ended up really loving this one. This one again was a 5-star read for me. It gave me everything I like when it comes to romantasy, and there was just enough fantasy and plot in there to keep me intrigued. I really liked the characters in here. There was a lot of kind of comic relief. Do I think it was anything kind of extraordinary or different for the genre and something we haven't seen before? Not really, but I just think it was done so well and I was really invested in this. I highly recommend the audiobook for this one. It is a duet narration, so if there's a male character talking, the male narrator narrates it and vice versa. And I definitely think that helped with the experience of this one, just bringing it probably from, if I just read it physically, maybe it would have been more of a 4 to 4.5 star, but mixed in with the audiobook and reading this immersively, definitely was a 5-star experience for me. So yeah, I was really surprised with this one and really glad I got over myself and read it, even though I was being really cynical about it, because I ended up really enjoying it. Okay, and the next question is a favourite new to you author, and honestly, I do try not to be repetitive with these things, but I do have to say that it's Frederick Bachman because I have now read 2 of his books, so Birdtown, and I also did read A Man Called Ove as well, or Ove. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And I've absolutely loved both of them, and both again were pretty surprising reads. When I read the synopsis, it definitely didn't feel like it was something that was going to be for me, but Frederick Bachman just has such a talent for writing character-driven stories where, honestly, there's not really much plot. There's quite a bit of plot in this one, but in A Man Called Ove, there's not really a huge amount of plot. We are just kind of following these characters. Very slice of life. There's obviously undertones in there of things that are going on and themes that we're exploring, but it's very much the characters that keep me gripped and keep me wanting to keep reading. And I'm now on a mission to kind of read all of his backlist. I think the next one I'm going to read is Anxious People because I've heard some amazing things about that. And then I want to finish this series because there are 3 books within this one. So slowly but surely making my way through his backlog because yeah, I just really loved his writing in both of the books that I've read so far. So fast becoming a new favourite for me. And then the next question is the most emotional or unhinged reading experience, and I did say we were going to talk about this book before, but it would definitely be The Burning God by R.F. Kuang, and I would kind of say that that's pretty true for this entire series, but the only book I've read obviously in the last 3 months is the finale, which is The Burning God. This series is one that really makes you question your morals, question your sensibilities, question your personal integrity, because it's very much centered around war. It has a very raw depiction of war, even though you're kind of rooting for the character that you're reading from and reading from their perspective. A lot of what they're doing isn't just morally grey, it is wrong, you know, but because it's warfare, you kind of come to that idea that all is fair in love and war, and because you know the context of what the character's doing, you do kind of feel yourself rooting for her when you probably shouldn't be. And that's kind of part of the reason it was such an emotional roller coaster, because from the start to the finish of this series you kind of watch her slowly but surely descend into almost a madness, but you're very much there with her because, as I say, you just get so much context from her history, and the way that it's written you can very much understand all of her motivations, all of her actions, and even when she's getting kind of her consequences, which are potentially at times just, you just don't feel that it is, and you definitely feel like you're being punished with her. Now, as it got closer to the end of this one, you do start to have that turning point where you can kind of see it from the other side and you do kind of more objectively view what she's doing in here. But yeah, this one was an emotional roller coaster. I wasn't expecting a happy ending or anything, but the ending of this one's probably going to stay with me for a really long time. So if you haven't picked this one up, definitely just check out some trigger warnings for this one. There's quite a lot in here. As I say, it's a very visceral and raw depiction of war. There's quite a lot of gore in here. It's quite explicit in the explanations of things that happen. So absolutely amazing writing, an amazing series, but pretty heavy. So just check out the trigger warnings before you pick this one up. So next up is the most disappointing book, and again there was a few that I could have put in here, but the one that I've chosen is Jade City by Fonda Lee, and the reason that this is the most disappointing is because this is the one I probably had most hyped in my head, and I was pretty sure I was going to give this one a 5-star. I'd been told it was very character driven. You know, we're following these kind of rich families within this city where jade is kind of what they trade, and it's their wealth and how it's built up. It kind of gives the users of it small amounts of magic, but from what I've been told it was very much more about the familial dynamics, and as I say, very character driven, and to me that just sounded like it was going to be perfect. But when I was reading this, I just felt like it fell very flat. I didn't really feel connected to any of the characters. There's quite a lot of twists and turns in here that I'm pretty sure are supposed to be, you know, very impactful. But for me, I was just kind of meh when those were happening, because I just didn't feel that connection with the characters the way I would have liked to. And I don't know if it's because I was maybe in a bit of a slump when I was reading this one, so I am still going to continue the series with this, even though I was a little bit disappointed in this one, because the writing was great in here, you know, objectively when I was looking at it. The writing style was great, the structure of the story was great, but it just was falling very flat for me. So don't know if it was a victim of my slump or if it just isn't for me, and maybe I had it on too high of a pedestal before I read it, but I was very disappointed in this one, as I say, mainly because I thought I was going to rate it 5 stars. So we'll see. The series could end up picking up for me, and it may just be a case of first book syndrome and you need to get further into the story to get invested, but at the moment it's probably sitting there on one of my biggest disappointments of the year so far. Okay, so next up is a book you DNF'd and why, and one of the books that I DNF'd this year is Cruel as a Light by Sophie Clarke, and this is quite disappointing because again this is one that was pitted to me as, if you like the Shadowhunters, if you like fantasy that's kind of in a historic setting, you're probably going to really like this one. And I actually ended up getting an ARC for this, so I did read it before I got this very late edition, and by the time I got to around 20% in, the main couple were already kind of showing signs of love, let's just say. So there was definitely the insta-love trope in here. I also think that the writing in here was a little bit chaotic. It didn't really seem to run smoothly for me, and a way to explain that is, say, you know, you're running through a scene and 1 minute they're in one place and then all of a sudden they would be in another place, but I didn't notice the connection and how we got there, and it was just kind of taking me out of the story a little bit. I'm still deciding whether that was a soft DNF or whether I'm going to try and pick this one up again, because as I say, I'm just really hesitant to make a firm decision on some of these because I was feeling so slumpy. I don't know if this was another victim of that and I was just rating it really harshly in my brain. But then another side of me kind of thinks I haven't really thought about this since I did DNF it, so that's probably a good sign that it was probably going to be about a 3 to a 4 star for me anyway, even if I was enjoying it a little bit more. So yeah, unfortunately this one didn't work for me, but I know a lot of people have really loved this. It was a really popular book and the release was kind of really highly anticipated, so take what I'm saying with a pinch of salt. I do think if you're nearer to romantasy, this will probably be more intriguing, but for me personally it just didn't work. And then the next question does kind of tie into that because it's tropes and themes you're kind of sick of seeing, and I would definitely say that insta-love is one that's just not for me personally. And I do understand that other people maybe don't like the slow burn, but for me personally I just love that build up of a relationship. You know, I don't care if they don't really get together until like 90% in the book. I love it to be slowly built. I like there to be tension, I like there to be angst. When there's kind of immediate attraction there, or they're kind of doing things that would imply that they care about a person that they met 2 days ago, I don't know why, it's just, it really takes me out of the story and I just don't really enjoy it. So I don't think it should go away because I know that a lot of people do enjoy that, you know, and that's kind of their preference, to have the relationship for longer within the book. Myself personally, I prefer a slow burn and kind of that character development and the relationship development, so I feel like I'm being a lot harsher now when I'm reading a book that does have that insta-love. I am getting a bit more confident to just DNF it because I don't think it's for me. And another thing that I'm kind of not sick of seeing, because I'm pretty sure I'm going to read plenty more books with it and I'll probably eat it up every time, but the fated mate kind of trope where a couple are destined to be together, I think it just takes it again away from me. It takes away some of the stakes if it's something that they're supposed to have been fated to be together, because any trials and tribulations that they go through, you're kind of like, well, they're going to end up together anyway. And I know most of these will be within that, you know, if you're reading fantasy romance or romance, you're looking for that happily ever after, but I just don't think we need it anymore. You know, we can just have people who choose to be together and it doesn't need to be fated or in the stars for them to do that. Okay, so next question is favourite main character, and Bit of a weird one, but it probably was Ove from A Man Called Ove, because he just reminded me of my father so much. He's definitely supposed to be grumpy, very set in his ways, kind of critical of the way other people do things, and it's probably making my father sound really terrible, but it's really endearing the way that he was written as well, and I just felt like I could really relate to some of the things that Ove was doing, because I do have an Ove in my life essentially. So really loved him as a main character and kind of loved watching his character development from start to finish. And the next question is favourite side character, and without doubt the first one that comes to mind is Carrion Swift from Quicksilver. Again, I really loved that book, but a lot of what I loved about it was his kind of one-liners. He was really funny, he was there to kind of add a bit of comedy to the story, and I really want to see more from him in the rest of the series, and I have a feeling we will do. I think he's a firm fan favourite. Then next up is a ship you became obsessed with, and I'm gonna be honest, in the fantasy, romance and the romance books that I've read this year, I haven't really become obsessed with any of the couples or anything like that. I may have enjoyed them while I was reading them, but I haven't been obsessed the way I am about, you know, some of the books I've maybe read in the past. So that's a question for you, I suppose, is what's a romantasy or a romance book that you have read over the last few months? It can be new or it can be backlist, that you just become obsessed with, because I need that. I really need that feeling, and it's something I really miss in reading romantasy, so give me all your recommendations below. And then next up is a villain you low-key rooted for, and I wouldn't say she was quite a villain, but gifted and talented. We're following kind of three rich kids who their father's just passed away, and they're kind of waiting to see what happens with his tech empire, and the oldest sister within that group was called Meredith, and she is very much kind of depicted as being this deplorable person. She doesn't care about anyone, she's really selfish, self-centered, but I actually related quite a lot with her because she is the oldest sister. She has a lot of those kind of older sister traits, and even though yes, she was a deplorable person within it, I was kind of low-key rooting for her and hoping that she would end up with the company, because kind of thinking of the context of her life and kind of the history, I kind of think she deserved it the most out of the siblings. So she wasn't quite a villain as such, but she definitely wasn't a likeable character, and I rooted for her. Not sure what that says about me, but I really wanted her to win. Okay, so we're on the last few questions, and the first one is the prettiest book cover you read, and I would have to say hands down it's the Last Hours series by Cassandra Clare. So I read Chain of Iron and Chain of Thorns, I think the second and third one are. Finished that series off, and I'll put the covers on the screen, but they're absolutely stunning. I love those covers. To be fair, her covers for most of her series are absolutely beautiful, and definitely love the artwork on there, so they would have to be the prettiest. A book you still think about weeks later, and I would have to give that one to All My Rage by Sabaa Tahir. This is one that I had really highly anticipated for such a long time because I love her series An Ember in the Ashes, and so glad that I finally read that this year. It's very different to that series obviously because that is a young adult fantasy, whereas this is literary fiction, but it was a book that really made me kind of question the way the world is today, question things about maybe my own prejudices. I just really felt like I connected with the characters with that one, and yeah, if you haven't read that one and if you're a literary fiction fan or Sabaa Tahir fan, I would definitely highly recommend it. The writing was amazing, and it's one that I still think about now, and I've read it probably about a month and a half ago, so it was definitely really impactful for me. And then the last one is a book that made you feel seen or emotional, and I would definitely say that Out of the Woods by Hannah Bonham Young, which is kind of out of left field for me, but that book I really related with the main character in that. It's kind of following a couple who have been married for a very long time, and the female character feels like she's kind of lost herself within this relationship, and I just feel like a lot of the themes in there were kind of about how when you've been in a relationship for a long time, you almost become that relationship and you become kind of one with your partner, and it's very easy to kind of lose yourselves within that, and it's about trying to reconnect with your partner that you've been with for a long time. Relationships aren't easy, you do need to continuously work at them, and as someone who's been with their partner for a really long time, I've been with my husband for, it's 19 years this year, we've been married for 10 years, and I just really felt like I could identify with some of the feelings she was having, especially as it wasn't necessarily about not loving her partner or anything like that. She wasn't kind of having a crisis around the relationship being right for her, but more so that she was wanting to find herself so that she could be a better person within that relationship. And I just really related to that because I do think over the past couple of years I've kind of been doing that, and as stupid as it may seem or may sound to some people, a lot of it has been through just really embracing my love of reading and love of books and finding Bookstagram initially, finding people that I could relate to in terms of their interests and their likes. I didn't really have anyone in my real life that I could chat to about the type of books that I like. I do have plenty of readers within my life, but they don't read the same genres, or they maybe just don't have the same interests when it comes to reading as I do. So I just always felt like a little bit of an outsider, and like it was almost weird for me to like these types of books, but since joining Bookstagram I've definitely found my people, I've made a lot of friends over there, and it led to me doing booktube as well. So for that reason I could kind of really relate to her trying to find herself within that relationship and become more happy with herself so that she could be a better partner within that. And there was a few scenes in there that just hit really close to home as well, so definitely made me feel quite emotional, but did definitely make me feel seen as well. And if you haven't read any of Hannah Bonham Young's books, definitely pick them up. I've only read two. I've read Out on a Limb and Out of the Woods, and they're kind of interconnected standalones. Definitely read Out on a Limb first and then Out of the Woods, but they were both really good and I really love her writing, so definitely want to pick up a few more of her books. There's a few questions about kind of the quarter ahead, and the first one is, which book are you excited to read next quarter? And the one that kind of comes to mind straight away, and one that I think I'm going to pick up within the next week or so, is The Rose Bargain by Sasha Payton Smith. And the reason I'm really excited about this one is I hadn't really heard what the synopsis was of this, but someone has said that it's kind of Bridgerton meets The Cruel Prince, and say no more, that just sounds perfect to me. I think there are some trials in here. I just heard it's a really fun read as well, so definitely want to pick this up soon because I definitely think it's one that I'm gonna really enjoy. And the next one is any reading goals or changes you want to make, and I think the first one is definitely whittling down on my series that I'm in the middle of. I have been trying to work really hard on that and continuing series as and when I can. I am starting to start new series. The first couple of months I wasn't really doing that, but at the start of April I decided I can start a few new series because I'm getting a little bit better at the series that I'm in the middle of, but I am still in the middle of around 40 something series, so I do want to try and finish those as much as I can. So if I've got a few series where I only have one book to read, I'm really trying to complete that. And then I do want to start to read a lot more literary fiction. As I say, reading Beartown really opened my eyes to that genre being something that I could enjoy, and again All My Rage was another literary fiction that I read that again I really enjoyed. So I've got a few books on here that do fit into that genre, so I definitely want to try and mix up my reading a little bit more because I do think that's probably why I was in a slump at the start of the year. I've just been very fantasy, romantasy heavy over the last year or so, and I think it's just feeling repetitive, and as it would, I think with any genre, if you read the same thing over and over again, it's probably going to feel repetitive. So I do think that's probably why I was in a slump. I'm going to try and break out of my genres a little bit more, try and make my monthly TBRs a little bit more diverse with regards to genre, authors, themes, everything like that, so that I'm kind of getting a bit more of a broad spectrum rather than just kind of keeping within my comfort box. And again, just trying to kind of really stick to that 25 for 2025 goal, because most of those are books that I've had on my TBR for a really long time, so I really want to try and read those so that I can see if they are books that I will enjoy, because if not, there's probably quite a few series that I can unhaul if I don't enjoy the first book. So definitely just wanting to get to the end of that list. And then lastly, do you plan to reread anything? And I think I've got a few books that I'm always saying that I want to reread. So An Ember in the Ashes is one series that I'm always wanting to reread. I also have The Hunger Games, and I do really want to continue in kind of the prequel books for those, so I may try and do a Hunger Games reread because it's been probably about 15 years since I read those, so it would be great to do a reread of those so that I can jump into those with kind of the full context of the books. And then one that I do want to pick up is Heavenly Bodies by Imani Eru, and as you can see I did start this when I was in my slump season, so I got around 25% in or something like that, but really didn't vibe with this at that time. But I've just seen so many people who I have very similar tastes to say that they love it, so I do think I'm going to give this one a second chance and restart it again just to see if it is something that I vibe with. It might just be a case of it's not for me, but I do want to give this one a second chance because looking back I was definitely kind of in the height of my slump when I started this one, and I definitely think that's the reason this one didn't work for me. And that's everything. That's my wrap up. I definitely want to know what your favourite book was of the quarter or your least favourite book, and if you've read any of these I definitely want to know your thoughts and feelings below. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Is there anything you think I should be picking up kind of immediately based on some of my favourites here? And if you feel like answering any of the questions, I'll put them all in the description box below, so if you want to give me your answers to them, kind of give me a bit of a review on your quarter, again I'd love to hear from you in the comments. If you like this video, do remember to give it a like, and if you want to see more from me, remember to subscribe. I post 2 videos per week and it's videos like this, so wrap-ups, reading vlogs, TBR jars, all good bookish things like that. Other than that, thanks so much for watching this one. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one soon. Bye!